Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Wednesday, January 29th. No, yeah, January 29th. I thought it was February. I lost a whole month here. So, what are we going to be talking about today? Well, the biggest thing is how the customer perceives you, sees you, what have you. And one of the things that I find very important are what I call icebreakers. And that's when you and the customer meet for the first time. That's going to set the pace, right? Well, stay tuned. Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. If you didn't already know it, my name is Eric, and yes, this is the weekday, Monday through Friday. Today is Wednesday, January 29th of 2025. So what are we talking about today? One of the things, what I call miss opportunities, is when you have a customer walk through the door and first impressions count. They do. You could have the most disorganized, dirty shop in the world, but if you are perceived to be a really good person trying to help them, and kind of like they're equals, there's nobody better or worse. My grandfather used to say, everybody puts their pants on the same way. It doesn't matter whether they're firemen, police, you name it. We all have jobs, right? But that's the thing, I hear a lot of people say, well, you got to have a spotless shop. And that's going to set the stage for the customer wanting you to do the work. And that's partly true. It is. Because I've seen spotless showrooms and have customer service or the first interactions not go well. And I've actually seen owners belittle customers because they did something stupid. And I can tell you right now, you and I know it was stupid, but we should never convey that to the customer. There's other ways of a lot of people have done this, and I'm guilty myself. That way, now you set the stage of where you've both screwed up and you're putting them at ease, not feeling like a jackass like a lot of other shops do. I have. I've seen shop owners belittle their customers, and I'm like, what the hell? So your first impressions count, and having a clean shop is fine. I we have disorganized chaos, or is it organized chaos? Yeah, where all the tools aren't always picked up, all the tools aren't cleaned, everything isn't, perfect. But one thing that we do when we have a new customer come in is set the stage. I usually say, how are we doing today? How can I help you? And Claude is usually, what can we do you out of? What's going on? Two different approaches still puts the customer at ease. And when the customer is telling you the issue, you don't start burst out laughing because it was something asinine. You don't. Not at the customer's expense. And I have seen that before. It's one thing to laugh with the customer, but you never laugh at the customer. And that should be even in your day to day interactions with other people. It's okay to laugh with them, but not okay to laugh at them. So, how is the best way to approach it? It's whatever way sets the customer at ease. Each one of us is going to have a little different approach. And like I say, mine is how are we doing today? How can I help you? And that just says, hi, how are you doing? And what can I do to help you? Because that's what we're there for, is we're there to solve problems for customers with their equipment, right? And I've had where somebody run over a garden hose with a lawnmower and wrapped the garden hose around the blades to have it come right to a screeching halt. And go out and flip, the chute on it and see that. And we load it onto the trailer, get it back to the shop, get the hard garden hose out of there. A lot of times you have to cut them buggers out. I've seen clothesline wrapped around it, dog leads wrapped around it, you name it. And I've seen even garbage bags get wrapped around it and not have it work the way it should, get wrapped on one blade. But you need to practice how you're going to greet your customer. And that will set the stage for every other communication after that. If that customer leaves feeling they can trust you and that you heard them and that you're there to help them, will go a long ways. If they think that you made fun of them, belittled them, and are able to do the work, but at what expense, right? We get a lot of women that come and use our shop. And why is that? It's because the other two shops in the area talk down to them. And that's the other thing. You never want to talk down to your customer. There's a different language you have to use when conveying what's going on, depending upon the person's experience, right? But I've got gals that take their blades off, sharpen them themselves, do services, and the only time we see them is if it's something over their head, carburetor issues or not running correctly, we'll see them. But other than that, they take pretty good care of them. And when the blades get wore down, they're in there buying blades off me. Yes, I'll take any business we can get. And I think that is helpful because you're looking for any business. I guess if you have a large overflow, you can be picky. And we're still picky to a certain extent. I can spot someone that no matter what you do, they're not going to be happy. And sometimes we could take somebody that the other shops have said, don't do it. You're going to regret it because the two of them had dealt with the guy before. And seen where they were one of our best customers. So sometimes it's the approach to an individual more so than anything. If they feel like you've heard them, the bark gets worse. And how can you fight with somebody or argue with somebody if they say you're right? That'll stop any argument. Just say you're right. If they continue arguing, they're arguing with themselves at that point. Because some people just like to argue. So what are ways that you guys open up the dialogue with customers? What do you say when they first walk through the door? If you've never seen them before. And I'll tell you right now, our dialogue and the way we talk is the same no matter how many times that customer walks through the door. The only difference is there's a name with that customer that we know now. And we know usually the machine. And we're there to be helpful. And we're also there to express our gratitude for bringing the work there because we could use the work to pay the bills. So why would you be anything less when you know they're going to pay your bills? It's the approach. If your approach is where your arms are wide open versus with your hands crossed where you're not listening. See, that's the other thing. It's less so the words that are coming out of your mouth and more so the body language you have. And you have to have the ability to read the body language on them too. Because they may have gone to the first two shops and treated like hell. Or they didn't feel like they were heard. Or they feel like, they're not getting quality work. Whatever it is. But I'm looking at body language too on that customer. If you're talking to them and they have their arms crossed, they're not listening. They really aren't. So you might as well stop right there and say, what's the problem? And usually when you say that, their arms will come apart and they will tell you what the problem is. If you talk too much, their arms will cross and they don't want to hear it. It's just simple things that I picked up over the last 62 years. Now, the second part of the introduction and dialogue that's as important as the intro, and that is conveying to the customer that you will not, our motto at our shop, and we let every customer that walks through that door know what that motto is we will not put $1 more into your machine than we would if it was our own. If it's going to be something major, you will hear from us before we even do it. And I will give you my best advice at that point. And we had case in point. We had a guy that wanted to know if I could pick up his Leland tractor. He'd run it out of fuel. But before he ran it out of fuel, he was having hydraulic problems with a 3-point hitch in the back. And the 3-point hitch supposedly worked, but the pump was spewing hydraulic fluid all over. So we went and picked it up. We had to use the winch to get it onto the trailer because it was non-running, right? And the minute we got it running, we see the 3-point hitch wasn't working. And before we could get very far on it, we call it the blow-by tube. It comes off the engine and it just started dumping oil, engine oil. So it tells me that one of the cylinders is filling up. Either you got a broken ring, cracked piston, there's something going on in one of those pistons. It could be you got a faulty injector that's spewing fuel that's not igniting. So we stopped there and we tried to fix the issue with, we thought maybe it was the filter because the filter was plugged in there. It's a mesh screen. So Claude got it apart last Friday and got it soaking all weekend and got it cleaned up, put back on silicone. And we got it started up and we got the hydraulics to work, the 3-point. But it wouldn't even lift a person. Claude jumped on the 3-point and it wouldn't lift him. And this was a brand new pump that he had put on himself. But when we first started getting the 3-point to work, we didn't realize that the bolts were loose on the pump too, so an O-ring was missing. But by the time we got to that point, I told the customer, look, we have it running. The 3-point is working, but it's not providing lift enough to a brush hog or anything. And it's still spewing oil out the overflow tube. And I told him, I said, my best advice is to stop right here. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Because, A, I know that Leland's, the parts are hard to come by. And he would be looking at, if we sent that out, probably around $4 grand, $5 grand to rebuild that engine. And it'd be worth it if you owned it for yourself and you were using it on the farm and the tractor was paid for. He had bought this tractor a year and a half prior to us seeing it. But no, it was a sick puppy, and we could continue on and add more labor, more parts. We changed the fuel filters on it, the oil filter on it, new oil, because it wasn't even on the dipstick when we first started. That was probably because when he was running it, the oil was coming out the overflow tube. But he said, I agree, thanks. We're going to stop right here. And he's going to arrange with me to get me paid before I drop the tractor off. And he's going to try to pedal it the way it is. And he probably got it the way it is, other than maybe running the fuel, out of fuel. He probably got it with low hydraulics for the lift. Because that could be nothing to do with the pump and everything underneath the seat in the chamber. It's all fixable, but how much do you want to put into it? And how much do you want to put into it? Because you have to also understand that it may be worth it to you, but the customer hasn't got the money to cover it. And that's very important. You don't want to go to a number that they just walk away on you. They just say, keep it. I don't need another tractor. Especially one that's as sick as this one. Because I know I got to get internal on it, one way or another. I'd start with injectors, see what that did. And get the engine so that we didn't have the blow-by. And if the injector didn't make the difference on it, you're talking a rebuild. If you're going to tear it apart enough to do one set of rings on that engine, you might as well do them all. And check the sleeves, because you can re-sleeve these. But that's going to cost money to send out to have it re-sleeved. So the second part is trusting you enough to leave you with something and that you're not going to come back with almost what it costs, if not more than what it costs to buy a brand new one. Because when you have labor rates at $100 plus an hour, it don't take long to add up to what a new one costs. And I've seen Stihl chainsaws that cost $230 brand new, and after a couple hours plus parts, your $245 is what you're asking the customer for. Are you freaking asinine? You're selling the brand new ones right there on the wall, and you kept going on this one? See, common sense is something you really need to have. And you have to reassure the customer that they are not going to get a surprise. If it's going to be more or an expensive fix, they need to be contacted, and then they decide which direction they want to go. And if they say, I want it fixed, it's on them. But normally what I do with them is I ask for a deposit at that point to cover at least the parts. So I'm going to start wrapping this up. So it's setting the tone the first time you meet them, reassuring them that you heard what they said, talk back to them as far as just saying what they've said, and letting them know, like with us, we let every customer know that comes through that door that we will not put $1 more into their machine than we wouldn't put into our own. And reassure them that they're not going to get a bill that's going to scare them. No. If it's going to cost even half what a new one costs, I'll call them and say, look, you're halfway there. What do you want to do? I mean, if you get a new one, you got a warranty. And that's why a lot of the shops have quit handling the handhelds, because they've cheapened them so much that it's hard for the shops to make money on it. because a lot of times it takes an hour and a half, 2 hours, to get a chainsaw completely tore down, find the issue, and then put it all back together. The better you are as a mechanic, the faster you can do it. So if you got competent mechanics, don't rule out the handhelds. If you don't, and it's something that's going to take you a little longer, you can't bill for your actual time. So on that note, you guys have a great Wednesday, and we'll see you here bright and early tomorrow morning. What is you guys that have shops? Doesn't matter if it's a small engine, auto, what have you. How do you introduce yourself to the customer for the first time? And how do you convey to them that you're going to take care of them? It's a good question. Alrighty, guys.